This is a remarkable step forward in keyboard value. It's the NuPhy Node keyboard, available in this 75% model or in a larger 100% model, and available in either low profile or high profile versions. Aside from the Kick 75, this is NuPhy's first step down closer to discount territory, with these boards retailing for just $100 or $110. Despite the lower price point, these still have just about everything that you would expect from an excellent NuPhy keyboard, which makes this one of the most compelling keyboard offerings I've seen in a while. I'm going to deep dive into all the details so that you can fully understand why I like these boards and decide whether it's right for you. But first, I want to disclose that NuPhy sent these keyboards over to me for review, but had no say in whether or how I decided to cover them. If you decide that you want to pick one of these up, you can use the affiliate links in the video description, along with code Cameron to save $10 off this already well-priced keyboard. Now, with all that out of the way, let's jump into those details. Starting with build and design, these are fully ABS plastic keyboards. Despite that, they still feel high quality in my opinion. They feature a simple retro look with a dot design on top. In particular, I think the retro look comes through with this tan color that is reminiscent of old school IBM computers. In total, there are 3 color offerings, and they're a little bit confusing. First, this one is called Lunar White. It's much more of an off-white or even a light gray color, which you can see easily when you put it side by side with the white version of the Air 75 V3. Next, you have this black color. It's pretty clearly black, but it's called ink gray. So the one that I would call gray is named white, and the black is called gray. I don't know why they did this. It legitimately caused confusion when I was communicating via email with NuPhy before they shipped me these samples. So when you go to order, just make sure that you double check that the image in your cart matches the color that you're actually expecting. Finally, the only appropriately named model is the one that I don't have, the light pink color, which really reminds me of a cotton candy pink. Overall, these are simple colors that might come off as a little bit boring and plain if you're into more exciting designs. If you want to spruce it up a bit, NuPhy does add 3 just basic colored keycaps to the box, in line with the overall NuPhy brand style, which is cool. However, the last thing to note, which you may have already noticed, is that no matter what color you choose, the bottom of the board will be black. Or I guess ink gray. I have to assume this was a cost-cutting measure since it really detracts from the overall look of the white and pink models. But then on the flip side, they chose to color match the switches on the back rather than just use one color on all of them, which is definitely not a cost-cutting measure, so maybe it was just a matter of setting priorities. At the top left of the board, you have a small set of lights used to signal things like connectivity and caps lock. Plus, you can optionally enable a fun feature where it lights up more the faster you type. On the other side is the most unique element of this board, a small 2-inch touch bar that allows you to adjust things like volume with a swipe. It's an awesome idea, but the execution is a little bit janky, and you really have to make an adjustment in the settings for it to be usable at all. I'll give you all those full details in the customization section later on. On the bottom of the board, you have 2-stage adjustable feet, which can take your typing angle from 3.7 degrees up to 7.1 degrees or 9.7 degrees on the low profile version. Note that these are the angles that I measured with a digital angle gauge, and they're slightly lower than NuPhy's advertised angles. On the high profile model, my measurements were 5.4 degrees, 8.6 degrees, and 11.1 degrees. These two were slightly lower than NuPhy's own. Also on the bottom of the board are NuPhy's AirFeet, which is an interesting topic on this keyboard. These small rubber bumpers are designed to slot into a MacBook keyboard, letting you type on your NuPhy keyboard instead of using the Mac's integrated one. On the low profile version, this works similarly to the Air 75 V3. The only downside compared to the Air is that since the frame on the Node is a bit longer because of the forehead with the dots and the touch bar up at the top, it takes up a little bit more space. The extra space isn't super noticeable at the top, as it still doesn't block too much of the screen. Where it's more noticeable is actually at the bottom, where it blocks more of the trackpad. Still usable, but an ever so slightly worse experience compared to the Air. It gets interesting on the high-profile version, though. When I first saw NuPhy's advertising for the Node 75, I was surprised that it seemed like AirFeet would also be included on the high-profile version. Upon receiving it, I realized that it kind of has AirFeet, but not exactly. The top feet look perfect, identical to the low-profile version or to the Air. The bottom feet, though, are slightly thicker, which makes them harder to slot into the Mac keyboard. The second change is that the spacing between the feet is also different. There's 7 millimeters more space between the feet on the high-profile model compared to the low-profile one. This means that if you use the top slot of the board as you normally would, the bottom feet wind up sitting directly across your spacebar row, which doesn't really work. It had a tendency to hold down the control key in my testing, for example. If you go one row down, it works, but there's still other issues to overcome, the first of which is the height. The taller, high-profile model blocks a lot more of the screen, making it kind of unusable. So the logical thing to do would be to move it down yet another row of keys. This fixes the obstruction with the screen, but now you have a major obstruction with your trackpad. Initially, I looked at this and thought, well, I guess no AirFeet on the high-profile version. But then I looked a little bit closer. After all, it is slotted into the keyboard, just like normal, giving you a stable working position. Because it's moved closer to you, the extra height doesn't block any more of the screen than the low-profile model. And finally, if you simply use a mouse instead of a trackpad, then this absolutely has AirFeet. I'm really curious how much of this was intentional. If NuPhy truly planned it to work out this way, then kudos. You probably could have done a little bit better job communicating the feature though. But hey, I'm here to help. If this was not the intention, I think it's just a wonderful coincidence. And in either case, you can use the high-profile model on a MacBook, though I'd recommend using it with a mouse alongside. Next, let's talk about the key layout, which is a critical topic here. If you skipped over AirFeet because you don't use a MacBook, don't skip over this. The reason why is that the layouts differ depending on if you go for low or for high. For these 75% models, the low-profile version is a pretty standard 84-key layout. It's identical to the Air 75 for context. This means full function row plus home and page up and page down on the side, and delete, insert, and print screen at the top corner. The 75% model for the high profile adds in some spacing, and as a result, it loses the print screen button at the top, and it loses the right control key at the bottom. It is very strange to me that they chose to make two different layouts based on the high or low profile boards, but here we are. If you're a previous Halo user, NuPhy's existing high profile board, the function row is spaced differently, and the removal of the print screen is a change between those two boards as well. If you decide to go with the larger Node 100, the differences get even bigger. Sticking with the high profile, this version is a classic 100% layout. 109 keys with a full-size number pad and plenty of spacing around the arrows and navigation cluster. This is very traditional. On the Node 100 low profile, you get a much more compact full-size board. Thankfully, you still get a full-size number pad with an oversized 0 key. That's critical for anyone who uses a number pad regularly, and something that NuPhy has not done in the past, so I'm very happy to see it. But then there are 6 keys removed compared to the high-profile model. On top, you're missing the F13 key along with print screen, lock, and pause. And then at the bottom, you're missing both the right control key and the right option or right Windows key. The weirdest part of the whole situation is that the 100% low profile keyboard is actually just the 75% high profile layout with a number pad attached. The whole thing doesn't make a lot of sense. NuPhy actually addressed the differences in their FAQ, so they must have been getting asked about this. And essentially they said that the low-profile users want simple access to navigational controls, whereas high-profile users want classic designs to match muscle memory. I don't know if that's fully fair, but at least it's a little glimpse into what they had in mind. Taking a step back, I honestly have more positive feelings about the designs than negative, but what I worry about is the potential for confusion when comparing between the two. So make sure that you look closely at the board that you want to buy so that you know exactly what you're getting. For the typing experience, this is pretty classic NuPhy. That is to say, it's very solid. The keyboard has a gasket-mounted design, and it includes internal foams and pads similar to their more expensive models. The keycaps are made of double-shot PBT, which means that they should hold up to shine and fading over time. For keycap profile, the high-profile version uses MSA, and the low-profile uses NSA, both of which I love, and the keycap shapes are great as well, with excellent concave designs that grab your fingers nicely. They are, however, non-shine-through for people who are big fans of typing in the dark. The switches are the same as all of the recent NuPhy releases. There's traditional brown and red switches, known as Nano in the low-profile format, and Max in the high-profile model. These switches are Gateron 3.0 switches. Then there are the blush silent switches, again in either Nano or Max. These silent ones are made by Kale. Here is a typing test with the pre-installed switches, the silent blush Nano on the low profile and the tactile brown Max on the high profile. If you want to hear more, I will link to additional typing tests in the video description as well. Typing on these keyboards is great. The poppy sound of the brown switches is awesome, though a little on the loud side, so maybe not the best for a shared working environment. If you do need to keep quiet to avoid disturbing those around you, the blush Nano switches are great. The spacebar on the high-profile model has a very consistent sound, though I do find that it sounds just a touch hollow. The spacebar on the low-profile model is nice and quiet from the silent switch, but it does have the ability to bottom out, especially if you press it hard on the far ends of the key. Similar to what I've experienced in the past with these NuPhy switches, there is also a bit of pinging present in some of the blush Nano switches. This is getting nitpicky though, as most people probably wouldn't really pick up on it. The pinging tends to be just on a handful of switches on the board, so you can address this by either moving them to less frequently used spots on the board if they bother you, or applying some lubrication to help get rid of the ping if you're a bit more ambitious. On the brown Maxes, if there is any pinging, I can't really identify it over the sound of the switch itself, which is good. Overall, there is not much to complain about with typing sounds here. You can choose silent or non-silent, and then if you go non-silent, you can get a smooth linear option or a tactile bump. There's no clicky option or any other variety, but since they're all the same price and they're all quite good, I'm very happy. Moving on to backlighting, the Node series uses north-facing RGB backlights in all of the models. Their keycaps do not have shine-through, but since the lights are north-facing, you could add on some shine-through keycaps if that's important to you. The lights have a ton of pre-programmed effects, and they look nice glowing across the polycarbonate top plate. In addition to the main backlighting, there is also the status light on the top left that we mentioned earlier, but otherwise there's no other case lights or fancy RGB anywhere else. Controls for the backlighting are simple, with most adjustments being done through combinations of the function key and the arrows, but you can also use the NuPhy IO software to make changes as well. NuPhy IO is NuPhy's proprietary customization software that the Node keyboards use exclusively. These boards are not compatible with QMK and VIA. Despite it being a non-open source platform, which is a bummer, I have to admit that NuPhy IO is one of the better customization platforms out there. It's simple, it's intuitive, and it's always worked great for me whenever I've tested it. To use it, simply go to nuphy.io in any web browser, There's no need to download any software, which is great because it means that you should be able to use and customize these boards on a corporate issued computer if necessary. Plus, if you do run into problems, changes are saved on the boards themselves, so you can always change it on another computer and then bring it over to a work machine after. If you do want an offline version of the software for some reason, you can download one as well, but I don't see much need when the web version is as good as it is. Within the software, you can adjust key mappings, including adding in custom macros. You can change your backlight settings and the settings for your status light, and you can access a handful of more advanced features. And then perhaps more importantly, you can update settings. There's two important things on this page. First is auto sleep. This keyboard has two levels of sleep functionality. Level 1 turns off backlighting to save battery. Level 2 completely disconnects the wireless connection. One thing that I've noticed in testing this board is that the keyboard takes way longer than expected to wake back up from that deeper sleep, which is initiated by default after 30 minutes. So if that bothers you, adjust this level 2 sleep number out. For whatever reason, it seems to max out at 127 minutes or just over 2 hours. That should be plenty for most people, but alternatively, you can also turn auto sleep off altogether if you wish. In either of these scenarios, just keep in mind that this will impact your battery life. So it's a trade-off between avoiding the slow wake-up annoyance and getting the longest possible battery life. The other important setting is the touch bar trigger count. This is essentially a sensitivity measure for the touch bar. Turning it up will make your volume increase and decrease faster with larger jumping intervals. Turning it down will make it slower with smaller intervals. Since by default, I find that the touch bar jumps up and down in increments that are far too large to be useful, I recommend decreasing this setting to 1 or 2 to make it more usable. If the touch bar is annoying to you, you can also just turn it off altogether, which is a nice option to have available as well. Like I said, the software is solid. Finally, the last customization callout is a bit different. There are 3D print files available for the Node series to create some pre-designed accessories. This is an interesting way for you to have a little bit of physical customization in addition to the virtual type. Next up is connectivity, where you can use a switch on the back to move between off, wired, and wireless modes. The wired mode uses the USB-C port on the back and supports a 1000 Hz polling rate, which is good if you'd like to use these boards for gaming. In the wireless mode, there's 3 Bluetooth connections that you can switch between using function plus 1, 2, and 3. Finally, function plus 4 connects you to the included 2.4 gig USB receiver that also supports 1000 Hz, plus it has a storage slot on the back of the device for when it's not in use. These boards are compatible with Mac, Windows, Linux, and mobile operating systems. They include keycaps for both Mac and Windows in the box, and there is a switch on the back to swap between the two modes as well. Last, but certainly not least, we have the battery. The battery life for these keyboards with backlighting off is up to 1000 hours, which is impressively long. For some context, that's 125 8-hour workdays. If you do use backlighting, you'll drop way down to just between 60 and 100 hours. This is a pretty big drop-off, but those backlight on numbers are still as good or better as some competing keyboards get with backlighting turned off, so it's still pretty solid. In testing, both the low and high profile models showed great longevity, though I didn't do any specific detailed tests of the battery life. The confusing thing for me, though, is the fact that the numbers are the same for the low and high profile models, even though they have different sized batteries, 3000 milliamp hours and 4000 milliamp hours respectively. I'm not sure why you'd need 33% more battery to get the same life out of the high profile. My expectation is that you probably will actually get some more life out of the high versions than the low version as a result of that extra battery, since the rest of the boards are functionally the same, with the exception of the switches, which shouldn't really impact battery life going from a low profile switch to a high profile switch. I also think that with backlighting turned on, the larger Node 100 models will probably do worse than these smaller versions, since they have more LEDs drawing on that same sized battery. Either way, I think that the differences here are between great battery life and even better battery life, so I am not complaining. For value and pricing, you can get the high or low profile Node 75 models for $100, and the larger Node 100s are $110. These are already great prices, but by using code Cameron, you can save $10 off those prices, making them even better. This pricing is right in the budget premium area. It's in line with one of the most obvious competitors for this board, the low-free flow Lite. I actually made a whole comparison video that you can find linked below. That video has the full details, but the gist is that I think for most people, the Node is the better buy. This is also close in price to Keychron's low-profile K Max series as another comparable. I would definitely take this over the Keychron though. It types better, it doesn't have the potential Bluetooth issues that Keychron can run into, and the switches are better as well. So NuPhy definitely wins, at least in my book. Overall, I just think that dollar for dollar, this is one of the best value keyboards you can get today, which is why I think it's such an impressive step forward in terms of just overall keyboard value. This is going to be a marker upon which a lot of other keyboards get measured in the future. So now let's recap that value proposition with the differentiators and deal breakers. For the positives, you have options. This comes with both the high or low profile option, as well as the 75 versus 100 option. This gives you 4 distinct keyboards to choose from, which hopefully gives a little something for everyone. Typing is great, and there's silent switches available in addition to classic red and brown options. Connectivity gives everything you would need for productivity work and basic gaming as well. That includes the 2.4 gig USB receiver and the 1000 Hz polling rates. The 1000 hour battery life is staggering and means that you won't have to worry much about charging, especially if you use this with backlighting off. These are all indicative of the solid fundamentals that NuPhy continues to nail on their boards. In addition to all of that, customization is easy through NuPhy IO, though I will always advocate for QMK and VIA instead of proprietary software. It's cool to see NuPhy expanding the use of their AirFeet, though definitely a niche feature. This is the first time that you could use a high-profile board on top of your laptop, at least that I'm aware of. The touch bar on top is a unique addition, though it wasn't executed perfectly. And finally, the 3D print files are another interesting addition that some people will really love. For potential deal breakers, this is an ABS plastic keyboard, and some people definitely prefer more solid keyboards like those made of aluminum. The layout differences across the different models are confusing and may mean that you can't get exactly the combination of profile and layout that you would prefer. The black bottom case being used on all colors makes some of the colors look worse. The touch bar is finicky at best and downright unusable at its worst. Finally, you can find pinging in some of your switches if you look close enough. For $100, I really think it's tough to find something better than the Node series. If you agree and want to pick one up, don't forget to use code Cameron to support the channel and to save yourself $10 in the process. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.